Hello, I'm Vasily Sakharov, and I'm the Cloud Financial Management Lead for APJ here at AWS. And our team focuses on helping customers to become more efficient on AWS by providing best practice recommendations and guidance to manage, optimize, and predict their cloud financials and usage. And today, I'll be covering the importance of optimizing your cloud environments and sharing some real practical examples of how you can drive efficiencies on a proactive basis and what tools we have available for you so that you can start your optimization journey with us today. So let's begin with an overview of cloud financial management. There are two kinds of companies, those that work to try to charge more and those that work to charge less. We will be the second. This quote from our founder epitomizes the work we do in cloud financial management as we obsess about our customers and help them identify and quantify value creation opportunities at each stage of their journey to the cloud. Because helping you save money is part of our DNA, it's who we are as a company, and it's how we work. Cloud financial management in itself is still a relatively new discipline, and its primary goal is to help you become more efficient on AWS through applying and using best practices which cover a range of tools, methodologies, and processes. And to help deliver that transformation, we have a 4-pillar framework from which all of these best practices and controls come from. It's see, save, plan, and run. C is all about establishing cost transparency and accountability. And the aim is to make the cloud costs visible to the right stakeholders, who are usually the decision makers within the organization, and at the right level of detail. Save is all about optimization, as in, how do you save money? How can you deliver your business objectives at the most optimal price point? Plan is about putting processes in place to understand your future spend and help plan for growth. It's working with your finance colleagues to get those forward-looking views of your cloud spend. And run is all about the operational controls and governance. It includes evaluating and transforming your organizational capabilities so that you remain cost-aware. And when executed successfully, you'll find a bit of run across all the other pillars too. But this session is about practical approaches to cost optimization. So let's turn our focus to the save pillar. First of all, I'm willing to bet that cost optimization comes up an awful lot when you're talking about or researching AWS. So why is it such a hot topic? Well, firstly, we want you to get value from us. So we want you to ensure that you only pay for what you need. We want you to eliminate unnecessary spend and stop things that are running which you are not using. Stop those resources that are not useful or adding any value to you. We want you to adjust resources to meet demand. Stop over-provisioning, as in making resources that you use in the cloud bigger than you actually need. Maximize the value of those cloud resources. So by decreasing the cost to exactly what you need for the moment, you will maximize the value that you receive for every cloud resource you run. And in turn, this will allow you to experiment and innovate without having to ask for more budget every time. Because by optimizing, you're enabling your business to achieve more with less. And you're freeing up additional resources, giving you the ability to rapidly innovate and create new products. In fact, the cost optimization topic has been the #1 customer priority, regardless of the levels of maturity in the cloud, for 6 years in a row now. So how do we get there? There's no magic bullet or tool that will get your environment fully optimized in one go. Because becoming optimized is a gradual process, and it's all about taking targeted actions. My advice is start small, but think big. Let me explain what I mean. Let's say this is your AWS bill. It's shown as those thin purple bars, and you can see them trending up over time. If you view it and report on it just as an absolute number without any additional context, it's very easy to come to the conclusion of, my expenses are increasing and that must be bad, which leads to bill shock and tough internal conversations. But what if, instead of asking questions like, what's my cost, you changed your questions to, what's my cost per something, where something is an action that helps to drive revenue or improve your business. It could be anything, like number of new customers, or website downloads, a number of subscriptions, for example, or some other specific metric that is meaningful to your business. Once you start to look at it through this lens, if the unit costs are holding flat over time, or coming down over time. But the AWS bill is going up like you see here. That's not a bad thing, because what it actually means is that you're becoming more efficient and you're scaling up your business, all because your unit cost is reducing. And the key driver that helps to reduce your unit cost as you scale is optimization. Each lever or method to optimize will move this important metric in the right direction, and by applying some of the methods I will share with you next, this will be your story on AWS too. And remember, if you're already using AWS, you can start applying these methods right away. And if you're considering AWS, remember that with dedicated cloud financial management specialists here, we will always have you back following your migration, making sure that you continue to maximize your returns on your cloud investment. Looking back at our history, AWS has always been innovating on the customer's behalf, and that helps you to take advantage of our price performance benefits and achieve the optimal performance for your workloads at lower cost. For example, at last year's reInvent, we launched AWS Graviton 3, the latest in the Graviton family of processors that are custom built by AWS and provide the best price performance for workloads in Amazon EC2. They provide up to 25% better compute performance compared to AWS Graviton 2 processors, which themselves were only launched 2 years ago. But think about this for a second. 25% is a very big deal and creates opportunities for massive competitive advantages. In fact, our EC2 compute offering now has over 475 instances, giving you huge capabilities to move diverse workloads onto AWS at a faster rate than ever before. With a combination of CPU and memory and storage and networking options that are purpose-built to best support your workloads for virtually every use case. But optimizing for cost doesn't just stop with picking the right instance type for your workload or application. There are other methods you can employ to ensure that you are continuously driving down your unit costs and using the AWS platform in the most efficient way. And the first thing you can do is to make sure you are not paying for idle instances by using the elastic nature of cloud to your advantage. What I mean by elasticity is being able to fit your supply to match demand as closely as possible by scaling the number of resources that are provisioned. It's an easy one to get right, and it can have a big impact. So consider this. There are 168 hours in a week, yet 108 of those are nights and weekends. We find that many companies often over-provision resources during downtimes, leaving everything on most of the time. And this is because they are trying to treat cloud the same as a traditional data center environment, instead of maximizing the benefits of the pay-as-you-go model of AWS. So, if you have workloads, especially running in non-production environments such as development or UAT or testing or other non-mission critical workloads, and if those are not shut down during evenings, weekends, and public holidays, you might be paying for every EC2 second of idle time. AWS has made it easier to optimize this by providing a tool called the AWS Instance Scheduler. This instance scheduler enables you to easily configure custom start and stop schedules for your EC2 instances. A solution is easy to deploy and can help reduce operational costs. So to summarize, if you are running any non-production workloads or environments, and these environments can tolerate being turned off when not being used, our recommendation is to automate this operation using the AWS Instance Scheduler to reduce your on-demand EC2 costs. It doesn't take long to implement, mainly depending on your environment size and complexity. But customers who use this solution to shut instances from Friday evening to Monday morning can save roughly up to 35% compared to running those instances all weekend. Scan this QR code to get started. It will provide you information on how to install the AWS Instance Scheduler, and then you can create a schedule based on your business requirements. So the Instance Scheduler knows which instances need to be turned off. When executed correctly, if you were to look at your daily cost trend, you should be able to see your costs dip every weekend. The second practical example I wanted to share is how you can optimize by using commitments. And commitments, such as savings plans or reserved instances, help you save money if you commit to a particular type of resource for a certain amount of time. And by doing that, you receive a considerable discount versus the on-demand pricing. And this will allow you to run the matching resource at the discounted price. Now, if you don't run the resources that match that particular type of your commitment, then you obviously don't get the savings. But as long as there's enough resource usage during the reservation term, then the benefit from these discounts is realized, and it can be very substantial. Consider this scenario. You have workloads on compute resources that always need to be on, because they may be supporting a critical application or a website that must provide 24/7 availability to your customers. Without using commitments, you'll be paying the default on-demand pricing for that instance. This would be a really good use case to explore the possibility of reducing your costs by purchasing a savings plan or a reserved instance for these workloads. While both work in a similar way, you will find that compute savings plans will provide a bit more flexibility than reserved instances. That's because savings plans automatically apply to EC2 instance usage regardless of instance family or size or availability zone or region or operating system or tenancy, whereas reservations tend to be a little bit more specific in terms of how the discounts are being applied. So if you have compute resources that are always on, our recommendation is to utilize compute savings plans. As an example, compared to on-demand prices, a 1-year no upfront compute savings plan can provide you with over 50% discount, and the savings can be realized within hours of purchase. And while this example requires a 1-year commitment, your break-even point is typically 7 to 9 months, as in your months 10, 11, and 12 are essentially free if you were to compare your annual spend to running the same instance using on-demand pricing. It's really easy to get started. You can check out all your commitment-based purchase option recommendations in AWS Cost Explorer, and that will be based on your current usage profile. You should, of course, review these recommendations with your technical teams to make sure that you're purchasing the right kind of commitment and in the right kind of quantity. Scan this QR code to check out our savings plans calculator, where you can input your region, instance type, and length of commitment to see exactly how much you stand to save versus on-demand pricing for your specific scenario. Another important optimization lever I want to share with you is getting a grip on your underutilized resources. Say your development teams have created some resources that are not being fully used, maybe because they were created for testing or some experiment, and since then the testing cycle or the experiment is finished, but the resources were never turned off. This means you will still be paying for those resources even though they are not being used. And if we think back to the cost trend chart I shared earlier, this will affect your unit costs, because with underutilized resources, you are not running your cloud environment with maximum efficiency. The good news is we have an AWS native tool to help you identify such resources. It's called the AWS Trusted Advisor. It inspects your environment and makes recommendations for saving money, improving system performance, closing security gaps, and so on. But more specifically, it will help you to identify underutilized resources that you may be able to eliminate. Our recommendation is to run the AWS Trusted Advisor, review underutilized resources regularly, and consider if they're still required. Ideally, looking to either delete or stop those resources altogether. The savings potential can vary and can very quickly run into thousands of dollars, which can be realized as soon as the resources are cleaned up. To get started, log into the AWS Trusted Advisor section of your AWS console and refresh the cost optimization checks. Then review those recommendations along with the estimated monthly savings opportunities for your account. Those recommendations can then turn into an action plan, which you can then prioritize based on the dollar value of each opportunity, and then begin resource cleanups. Now let's talk about Spot. Spot is a cheaper way to run a resource by using spare capacity of AWS. A common use case of Spot is for resources that run non-critical, fault-tolerant, batch processing operations that can be resumed or restarted if the resource becomes temporarily unavailable. And that's because Spot instances can be reclaimed depending on their availability. Also, if you're running containerized workloads on EC2 or using our managed services, you can leverage Amazon EC2 Spot for these workloads to help reduce your costs. We recommend to assess your workloads for Spot usage for containerized workloads, workloads that are stateless, workloads that are fault-tolerant, and also consider a Spot-first approach when developing all net new workloads. The savings potential can be massive here because Spot instances are available at up to 90% discount compared to on-demand prices. To get started and find out more, take a look at our online hands-on workshops that help you to identify workloads that are suited for Spot and how to launch your first Spot instance. You can also talk to our Spot specialists who can help you to assess and validate whether a particular workload can be run using Spot instances. So how can you take these approaches and make them a part of your optimization toolkit? Let me share some pro tips on how to get started. Firstly, become familiar with these optimization levers and how they work. Seek support from your account teams, especially early on as you start driving some of these optimizations for the first time. They'll be able to help you validate your approach, provide best practice guidance on how to proceed, and also connect you with other experts whenever there's a need. I also want to show these optimization levers on a chart, highlighting the level of effort, as in how difficult it is to implement them, against the cost impact of each one. And I use two colors here to distinguish that the green ones cover rate optimization, as in you are reducing the rate you pay for your resources, while purple ones are usage optimization, as in you are optimizing what you consume. And so you can see that savings plans and reserved instances are probably the easiest cost reduction levers to implement. Also note that right-sizing becomes much harder after the migration. And so all these levers all have different levels of complexity and impact, and you will need to pick the ones that are right for you. Typically, it's best to start off with the low complexity ones first, and later, as you scale, target the higher impact items as well. But you can see where they all fall in this general outline. And when it comes to cost optimization, there are two important concepts to always keep in mind: automation and cadence. Use the AWS tools to help you automate some of the optimization mechanisms, like the AWS Instance Scheduler or Trusted Advisor. And just as important, this cannot be a one-off exercise. Cost optimization needs to be a repeatable practice because one-time projects on reducing costs in the cloud are usually short-lived. We see that approaches to reducing costs really vary depending on what the customers are ultimately trying to achieve and what their cloud maturity is. But I wanted to point out that even for some of our more mature customers, who may have already run multiple cost optimization initiatives in the past, there is still scope for further gains. And let me give you an example. So last year, we had a customer who was an experienced AWS user with a cloud-savvy team and who already has done a lot of work around getting the right savings plans and reservations in place. That customer was NTT Docomo, and think of them as the Telstra of Japan. And they partnered with the AWS Cloud Financial Management team to see if they can find further cost efficiencies in their environment and improve their unit cost to operate. As part of that engagement, we evaluated their current state and delivered an action plan for cost reductions that included leveraging spot pricing, purchasing additional commitments, modernization, as in switching to the latest generation instances, and reducing their storage volume usage by deleting unused and duplicate snapshots. As a result, NTT Docomo were able to achieve a further 12% cost reduction off of their AWS bill. And that's all the more impressive when you consider that this 12% is from an already relatively optimized environment where they had a good understanding of their cloud expenditures. So I hope this really highlights the impact that cost optimization can have on customers at all stages of their cloud journey. To wrap up, what I really want you to take away from this session today is that the time to start your cloud financial management journey is now. When it comes to optimization, prevention is always better than cure. And I encourage you to take one of the levers from this presentation, get familiar with it, and apply it. And always remember the basics. Look for areas of spend with very stable costs and resources which are dated, because stable and dated is not the cloud way. Large instances will always cost you more than smaller instances. So do your stakeholders really understand the cost impact of going for the latest and greatest every time? Remember to periodically declutter and turn stuff off. But don't kill off those idle instances tagged as DR or failover, of course. Run your trusted advisor checks regularly and make use of recommendations. But again, don't use them in isolation because you don't want to buy a reserved instance for something that your tech team is about to turn off next week. So get your different stakeholder groups internally talking to each other. The good news here is that because of the dynamic nature of cloud, a lot of the time you'll start to see the cost benefits right away. Lastly, If you've not yet started on AWS and are still considering alternatives, I really encourage you to attend the session about modernization acceleration, to learn about migrations and use these principles as you start to migrate. Last but not least, the phrase "you never stop learning" cannot be more true when it comes to cloud technologies. And I encourage you to visit our AWS Skills Builder, which is an online learning platform, and it makes it easier for anyone, from beginner to an experienced professional, to build AWS cloud skills. You'll find over 500 free self-paced courses in up to 16 different languages. And as you build your skills, why not prepare one of our 11 AWS certifications? These are industry-recognized certifications and will help you build knowledge, credibility, and confidence. We also have something called the AWS Certified Community, which brings together AWS certified practitioners and builders to participate in discussion forums, learn, network, and share best practice tips. Thank you very much for watching. If you would like to get in touch, please connect with me on LinkedIn. Lastly, we really value your feedback, and so to help us improve our sessions in future events, please remember to share your rating in the session survey. Thank you once again.